Welcome back, my students, to another episode of Comic Class. And in today's video, guys, we're going to be taking a look at Nick Spencer's The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 12 Shattered Web. And yeah, this is basically just like a filler volume and basically kind of ties into what the next story arc is going to be, kind of sets that up, and also gives us the conclusion to Last Remains, basically the last volume, and kind of like tying up those plot threads. And yeah, so this is a pretty good volume, ties up loose plot threads from the last volume and also sets up new ones for the volume after this. So it's really interesting to see, and we're going to talk about all of it in today's video. So without further ado, guys, let's talk about Spider-Man Volume 12 Shattered Web. Let's get started with the video.
You just need to believe.
So our story pretty much starts off showing us the events of what happened in the last volume, basically with the Green Goblin fighting against Kindred / Harry Osborn. And this is where we're revealed to the Spot basically working for the Kingpin, or at least being forced to use his powers for the Kingpin. And this is that black light stuff that we saw at the end of volume 11. We saw like this giant black void appear to swallow everybody. It was actually the Spot using his ability, and yeah, he basically got everyone kind of like teleported or something like that, and they were able to capture Harry Osborn, the Kingpin, and the Green Goblin. And it's revealed that the Green Goblin was in on it. So yeah, so basically we get to see that Norman Osborn is looking at his son Harry as he's encased in this type of tomb-like device. What's cool about this is that this was created by this woman scientist, and basically I guess she has powers of magic or something like that. And basically Harry can hear Norman while he's in the cube. He's not like incapacitated or something like that. He actually is still awake and alive, so that's pretty cool. And now we get to see that Fisk, basically the Kingpin, arrives and kind of like taunts Kindred and tells him that he's kind of like in the palm of his hand now and kind of like at his mercy. And this is where Norman Osborn basically tells the Kingpin to give him some time to torture Harry, and basically kind of puts up this front so that the Kingpin doesn't do anything to hurt Harry. Now once he gets everybody to leave him and Harry alone, this is where you get to see different emotions of Norman Osborn, kind of like going through all these different emotions until he finally talks about what happened in the previous volume, behind the scenes. And it's revealed that the Green Goblin had already told MJ that he was going to throw a pumpkin bomb at her, and it turned out that it was only a flash grenade, which is still pretty dangerous. It can actually blind you. But I'm guessing, Mary Jane closed her eyes or something like that. So that's pretty cool that we get to see the Green Goblin is as smart as always. And it shows that, he had a plan with Mary Jane, and he's actually kind of good now that the Sin Eater took away all his sins. And we do get to learn from Norman Osborn that the sins that were, his, and that the Sin Eater actually took out of Norman, basically have now returned. Even though a lot of the people are returning, their sins, Norman's the only one that's been kind of spared from this fate that he knows of, and he doesn't understand why. And he has these predictions on why Harry spared him, but Harry does not speak to Norman. And this is kind of like a big plot point in this volume, that he's really trying to get Harry to speak to him to figure out what exactly happened to him, but Harry refuses to talk until they acknowledge what it is they did wrong. So I can't wait to get the reveal on what that is, and we do get a hint at the end of this volume what that might be. And like I said, we get to see other characters like Carly, and I believe his name was Overdrive or something like that. We get to see that he's doing fine, that his powers have returned basically to him, and basically says he wants to turn over a new leaf, and that he had kind of like a bad run-in with the law, but he wants to change his ways. He's been trying, and he asks Carly basically to go out for dinner, and she says they can go out for coffee instead. And we'll see if anything happens with these two characters. Now we just see that the character of Martin Lee, basically I believe his name is Mr. Negative, or the Negative Man, the alter ego of that guy. Basically he's like a split personality type character. He arrives at Aunt May's shop, and Aunt May kind of like takes him in to kind of like nurse him back to health. Now we get to see that Kindred basically is just, talking to the Green Goblin, or he's having a flashback. Basically, it's showing us what happened in the last volume, the part that we didn't get to see when this full, void was happening and he was getting encased in this tomb-like device. We get to see that he tells Spider-Man and the Green Goblin that it's their fault why he's the way he is, and he wants them to figure it out. And he does state that he loves these two people in his life, but he just cannot forgive what they've done. So again, it's the most interesting plot point so far, and we can't wait to see what exactly it is that made Kindred / Harry Osborn to what he is. Now, Spider-Man breaks into the lab that Harry is being held in and tells Norman that they need to talk. Now, Norman basically tells Spider-Man he wants him to help Harry remember what exactly happened. Well, not for him to remember, but for them to figure it out why Harry won't talk to them. And this is where Spider-Man kind of lashes out and basically attacks Norman, which was very not out of character, because it's understandable all the stuff Norman's done. And now apparently he's good because all the sins have been spared from him. So he's kind of not even the same person anymore, and Spider-Man kind of is losing it because of that. We also get to see that the Order of the Web starts calling themselves the Order, and basically do agree that something that has to be done with what's happening with Spider-Man and the Green Goblin and Harry, because something is way more bigger that's not being explained, and that is definitely into that later on in the volume. Now we get to see that Spider-Man, like I said, he lost control for a bit, and Norman doesn't even try to fight back because he doesn't really have the Goblin Serum, I think, anymore in his body. Like I said, it was just a facade basically when he fought against Kindred. He already knew that the Kingpin was gonna, kind of encase him, him and his, crew. So, he wasn't even, I think, boosted up with the Goblin Serum. I have no idea. But here he doesn't even try to fight back. So Spider-Man leaves and he kind of thinks about what exactly he's just done. He's losing control and doesn't even know if what he's doing is the right decision. And we also get to see that Harry kind of smiles, says that he's locked up in here, and that's right where he wants to be, or he says right where I want to be, which leads me to believe that he has a whole other side plan for what's going to happen to all of the people that he's talking about. So I can't wait to see what happens with that. Now, Carly actually gets attacked, supposedly by Kindred, by his centipede, so I'm wondering if he actually has people on the outside, or his centipedes are kind of sentient and they do his bidding. We'll see about that. We don't get an answer what happened with Carly in this volume, so that kind of sucks, but hopefully we get that in next volume. Now, so we get to see this little flash forward to Spider-Man fighting against Martin Lee / Mr. Negative, his kind of henchman, and this kind of flash forward, so we'll get back to it whenever it comes. But yeah, so you get to see that Martin Lee basically, like I said, is being helped by Aunt May, and he basically gives us his backstory for people that don't know about the character, saying that ever since the Sin Eater has done his stuff, that Mr. Negative has actually been out of his body because he's actually part of his sins or something like that. This sort of revealed to Martin Lee basically saying that he's actually scared of his other side, and he's very similar to a character like the Hulk, it seems. Now, Martin Lee's henchman, Mr. Negative's henchman, basically arrive at Aunt May's shop, and they're gonna try getting back Mr. Negative. So before we go into that, we get to see that Peter basically goes to talk to Liz Allen, I believe it's her name, and basically her and her son are hearing Peter basically talk about how Harry has actually become a supervillain again and has become someone like Kindred. And yeah, and basically Harry's son basically reveals to his mom that he found his dad's secret stash of Green Goblin gear. So I have a theory of what's going to happen. I think that Norman is going to get back his sense, to be honest, and I think when that happens, he's actually going to go to this area and grab Harry's glider and his pumpkin bombs and just his stuff. But that's just a theory I have. Or Kindred / Harry might actually get back into his Green Goblin uniform and kind of ditch the whole Kindred outfit. But I have no idea, because Kindred might actually be what he is. So I did explain during the last Remains volume that we did get to see that scene where Peter basically punched through his face and there was nothing. There was just a pure hole. So, Harry might not even be alive. It's just very weird. Hopefully that gets all explained. Now, Norman Osborn basically arrives and tells Peter that he's there, and he basically is there, he says, to warn Peter about Aunt May, that she's actually about to be attacked by Martin Lee's henchmen, because they're going to try getting back Mr. Negative. And yeah, so Peter basically freaks out, and he heads out and tells Liz that he has to leave right now. And this is where we just see that Spider-Man finds Martin Lee and Aunt May about to be attacked by Mr. Negative's henchmen, and this is where Spider-Man takes them on and basically lets out a little bit of his frustration with all the stuff going around him. And they're kind of like a type of villain, basically, type of henchman that can be attacked multiple times and not take that much damage. So it was the perfect opportunity for Spider-Man to let loose and get some rage out. So that was pretty cool. I love that scene. We also get to see that one of the people that works for Mr. Negative, it seems, is ready to give Wilson Fisk a deal, basically, in trying to find the other tablet. Basically, they have the part of the tablet. There's two tablets, basically, one being life and death, and the other one being something else. I'm not sure what exactly it was called, but yeah, basically, they need both in order to fulfill Kingpin's wish in bringing his wife back, it seems. So they're gonna make a deal. Now we get to see that Norman basically tells Liz that he knows that she's not gonna trust him, but if they want to go see Harry in the state that he's in, kind of hoping that this might break him out of his not talking spell. So we get this really cool scene where Liz and Harry's son, I think his name's Normie, basically arrive and see what Harry has become, and get this really cool scene where it's showing Spider-Man, Aunt May, Martin Lee, basically with the henchmen of Mr. Negative, having this huge battle with Spider-Man trying to protect them, and at the same time we're getting panel shots of Liz's reaction and Normie's reaction to seeing Harry in the state he's in, with Normie running away at the very end. Now Spider-Man basically is having these thoughts of why Harry is doing what he's doing and what is the end game gonna be. And this is where one of the henchmen basically grabs Aunt May and says that Spider-Man has to do what he says or she's gonna die. So Martin Lee basically tells all of them to stand down and that he'll do what they want to get Mr. Negative back. His body is the vessel for Mr. Negative, and all they want is for him to go outside so that his sins can go back into him and Mr. Negative can kind of come back into the physical realm, it seems. So he agrees to it and says that it's time he makes a decision for someone other than himself. And I really enjoyed this scene because he knows how bad Mr. Negative is, but he's willing to do that in order to save Aunt May, because she's the only one that kind of helped him out when he was in this situation, in this dark place. And now he feels like there's a chance that he might be able to control it in the future and just do a better job at life, and I really enjoyed that. So he goes outside and he becomes Mr. Negative again. And it's a really cool panel, and we get to see Spider-Man basically tells him that he's going to be taking him in, to the police, no matter what, one way or the other. He's going into jail. This is where Kingpin shows up, basically tells Spider-Man to look the other way, and that he's taking him in with the police. And Spider-Man already knows something's up with Kingpin. He's known this for a while, since Boomerang told him about the Life tablet, I believe is what it's called, Life and Destiny tablet. And yeah, so basically it is revealed to us that Kingpin is in on it, and he wants Mr. Negative to help him find the other tablet, because he needs both in order to bring his wife back to life. So we get this really cool scene with Norman Osborn basically talking to Normie and basically telling him about what it was like for his father when he was growing up, Norman and Harry. Basically just talking about how Harry was a way better person back then, that he was a lot similar to what Normie is right now, and that Norman wishes that he could have been better, which is what he's been saying all the time since his sins have been erased. And Spider-Man basically sees this whole interaction, and Norman, of course, does notice that Spider-Man is watching them, which I thought was a really nice scene, because it shows that Norman doesn't need the Goblin Serum to kind of be this very intellectual figure. He was already smart and very aware of his surroundings. Even before he got the Goblin Serum, he was just always a very smart man. So I really enjoyed that. Now we get to see that Spider-Man, that's a very important part, because Spider-Man, like Mr. Negative had said, Martin Lee, before he turned to Mr. Negative, you gotta believe that there has to be a chance for someone to do good in the future. So we'll see if that plays out with Norman, if Spider-Man's gonna give him that chance yet again. For those that know the history, Spider-Man's done this so many times. But maybe this time will be different. Ned Spencer's been doing a lot of crazy stuff, and it's been working, so we'll see. So basically, the Kingpin talks to Mr. Negative, and basically tells him that, he wants him to work for him, and that he has a condition for him. Basically, like, he has a, how would you say it? He's basically giving him a bargain, and that he was willing to give him what he gave him, but if he wants to get even more, then, help him get the other tablet, because Mr. Negative has already provided him one half of the tablet, but the other half, if you remember, I believe is with Boomerang and Spider-Man. So, and I'm pretty sure Boomerang is the one holding on to it, so, it's probably going to be like a, kind of like a hunt, basically, which is pretty cool. And yeah, so we get to see that the Kingpin basically tells them that there's going to be some competition. We get to see a ton of different Spider-Man Rogues Gallery right here. They're not the greatest villains in his Rogues Gallery, but it does seem like we're going to be seeing a lot of players that we don't really get to see that much of, and I'm really excited for that, because I think you can make a good story without having some really well-named characters, as long as the story is good. And I think this is a story that really can work, using all these characters for some type of hunt for, I believe it's called the Lifeline tablet or something. And yeah, so we get to the final portion of the volume where we basically get a conclusion, or at least a type of resolution to what Peter's going through, having nightmares of Kindred. And yeah, he basically wakes up, and Mary Jane basically tells him that they're going to be heading out for the day because she has something she wants to show him. And they basically go to this place where her and Peter basically, I think they had their first date or something like that. And it was a place where Mary Jane had her first ever show. And she basically tells Peter to close his eyes and imagine Kindred's there. Basically get whatever he has off his chest. Now he can kind of like move on, or at least, begin the process of moving on. So we get this really cool scene with Peter basically just, pouring his heart out, basically telling Harry that he doesn't understand why he wants to make him suffer so much. But deep down inside, he kind of feels like Harry's right, and that something Peter really did make him into Kindred. And like I said, I can totally understand why this is eating Peter up, because if you saw that scene with Kindred where he punched a hole in him, I mean, he's not human anymore, or something's up with Harry. He's not him anymore. There's something different about him, and Harry even mentions that he's, he was turned into something when in the last Remain story. So he does say that he just feels like he just wants him to tell him what to do. And it's a really cool panel with Mary Jane hugging Peter, and they basically kiss and talk about how it's good that he finally was able to say what was on his heart, and hopefully they can start going forward and eventually do get a resolution with Harry, which I know, that's how stories are. We will get that resolution eventually, but I just wonder how long it's going to be until Harry breaks out of his little cube prison thingy. And yeah, so Spider-Man basically realizes that he's a little late, I believe, for school, and he basically leaves and gets to his Spider-Man outfit. And this is revealed to Mysterio actually working with Mary Jane, and basically I guess Mysterio is implied to be turning a new leaf, and basically it's helping Mary Jane get back on track with her acting career. And Mary Jane basically tells Mysterio that she hasn't told Peter, because Mysterio asks if Peter already knows that she's working for him, that he's actually the director of the play, and she says she doesn't want to worry Peter, and basically tells Mysterio that he knows who Kindred is, or what made him into what he is, but Mysterio basically says that there's some things better left unsaid. And this story gets the final 2 or 3 pages, which reveals that Doctor Strange enters some type of like underworld or some other world, and basically forces his way into a room to talk to the leader, and it's revealed to be Mephisto, with Doctor Strange saying what is wrong with Peter Parker's soul. And so that's how the volume ends. So it seems like the way the direction's going, which a lot of people have predicted, is that they're going to retcon the One More Day storyline, which will make Peter Parker and Mary Jane married again, and give them a possibility of having a child, and kind of going the Superman route, with, you know, Superman having a kid now. And I think that's awesome. I think that that would be a great thing to have. Now, I'm not sure if I would like them to have a kid and just make it a copy of Spider-Man. I don't think that's the direction to go. If anything, I think a better direction would be to have the kid actually be a baby, because then you can have him kind of like be a parent. And you don't have to worry about having the kid have superpowers and stuff. And you just build up to that throughout the years. But I think it would be interesting to have them married again, Mary Jane and Peter, and having a kid or 2 kids, however many kids, 3. I think it'd be awesome. And I think a lot of people are ready for that retcon. I think they've been ready for years, maybe even since it first had happened. I wasn't around during that time, you know, reading comics, so I don't understand the pain of that. But for a lot of people, I do see that every time an issue comes out, that they're just waiting for that retcon to come. So hopefully Ned Spencer does deliver on that promise. Well, he didn't promise it, but you know what I mean. You know, on that plot line that it seems to be set up. And yeah, overall, that was Volume 12, Shattered Web of the Amazing Spider-Man by Ned Spencer. Overall, guys, I think I'm going to give this a good rating. It was very enjoyable, and I recognized reading through the issues, you know, this whole volume, that this is just a filler, basically. You know, this was to close off all the plot threads that were put in at the end of Last Remains. And not only that, but we also get some setup for, I believe it's called King's Ransom, which is going to be the next volume or story arc. At least that's what I've been reading. So I believe that's the name. But yeah, so that's setting that up. And it looks like we're going to get some type of conclusion soon. You know, like a huge story arc with Kingpin bringing back his wife, or at least trying to. Maybe something goes wrong and awakens a supervillain. I have no idea what's going to happen. But the Kingpin is actually a really cool character in Ned Spencer's run, and I think that it's always been leading up to some type of big confrontation with Spider-Man. So, I mean, a Spider-Man versus Kingpin fight would be amazing to see in one of these arcs. So it seems like King's Ransom could be what Sin's Rising was for Last Remains, and it could be we're going in that direction. And after that, we'll get the, you know, the retcon of One More Day. Maybe that's the strategy that Ned Spencer's going with. I have no idea what the, you know, publishers are planning with Ned Spencer. But yeah, overall, guys, I think the video is long enough. I'm going to end it here. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I do trade paperback reviews. I've been doing stuff like Spider-Man, Batman. I'm going to be doing some Superman stuff pretty soon in the future, maybe next month or so. I'm also doing Spawn and other series. And I want to be start dropping some discussion videos, because there's a lot of comments I've read that I would like to talk about that I don't think need a full-on retrospective / review series. So be sure to look out and keep a lookout for that. But until next time, guys, God bless you. Until the next lesson, guys, keep on reading those comments.
I am who I'm meant to be. I am who I'm meant to be. Over and out again. My future needed clarity, so I could see